This is a mini lecture on what doors a hymn or song opens. A number of years ago, Rebecca Slough, a former dean at AMBS and a skilled church musician, gave a lecture demonstration entitled, "What Doors Does a Hymn or Song Open?" the same title I'm using for today's mini lecture. I don't have the skill at the piano to do what she did then, but I found her approach intriguing and useful, so I will draw on it in my remarks today. I'm also drawing on two other sources, Thomas Troger and Carol Duran's book, Trouble at the Table, Gathering the Tribes for Worship, published by Abingdon in 1992, and a 2017 article by Rita Ferrone, a liturgical scholar, entitled Musical Theology, and published in Commonweal, a magazine for Catholic laypeople about the interactions between faith and contemporary politics and culture. Troger and Duran make the point that music and theology are interrelated and interdependent, that each keeps the other from slipping into its own distortions. They quote Robin Lever, an emeritus professor of sacred music, who writes, quote, "Theology prevents music from becoming an end in itself by pointing humans to its origin in the doxology of creation. Music prevents theology from becoming purely intellectual matter by moving the heart of humans to consider its ultimate purpose, the doxology of new creation," end quote. Troger and Duran, following Martin Luther, a composer of many hymn texts, view music as a gift from God. As such, they argue that it needs the same kind of attentive stewardship as God's other gifts. In addition, truly hearing music and letting it do its work in us and in our public worship requires discipline and effort. Quote, "It is not something that automatically happens to us, any more than we automatically know how to pray or how to understand the Bible," they write. As worship planners and leaders, it's important for us to clarify the function of music and worship, especially since people can have such deep associations and strong opinions about what kinds of music and texts are or are not appropriate. Associations and opinions that often contradict each other. One person's heart song is another person's button pusher. One congregation's deep tradition puts roadblocks in another congregation's practice. One culture's genuine worship is a mystery or a miss to another culture. Troger and Duran propose that the function of music in public worship is ministerial. Thus, quote, "The principles of selection and judgment are more complex than if its function were purely to entertain or to provide a refined artistic experience. Ministerial does not imply that there is to be no concern about the aesthetic quality of what is chosen, but it does require a much broader understanding of what would be appropriate for a congregation, given the wide diversities of background and need that are present when people gather to pray." End quote. In addition to being ministerial, some musicologists and musician theologians have also argued that music is a part of the language of theology, that, quote, "music says things about God that really cannot be said in any other way, and that therefore music must be better understood in its unique role within the communication of faith. It is more than an envelope for a religious message. It is part of the communication itself. We use music and are affected by music, theologically. So let's test this hypothesis, that music is more than an envelope for theology, in the following way. We'll begin with a hymn text, Frederick Faber's 1862, "There's a Wideness in God's Mercy." Please note that I'm referencing a Western hymn text and later Western classical music to which it has been set, not because Western texts and tunes are better than other kinds of Christian music, but because this is the hymnody I know best, and this particular hymn provided me with the resources I needed to make the points I wanted to make in this mini lecture. Much of what I'm saying here could also profitably be used to analyze contemporary Christian music and music from a variety of styles, ethnicities, and times in history. So what I want you to do first in this multi-part process in musical theology is to open the Word document linked below this mini lecture and read verse 1 there aloud. After you've read the text aloud, take a minute or two to doodle the following on a scrap piece of paper. First of all, what words or phrases especially stand out to you? Second, of these, which ones are especially resonant and which do you resist? When you've done this, come back and pick up part 2 of this mini lecture.